When my sister, Victoria, told me I wasn't invited to her wedding, it felt like my world cracked open. We'd survived our parents' deaths together, leaned on each other when everything else collapsed, and yet, here she was, pushing me away with trembling hands and eyes full of fear. I didn't know it then, but that single conversation would unravel every illusion I had about safety, family, and the quiet evil that hides behind a charming smile. She said it was for my own good, that it was better this way. But better for whom? When I looked at her, the same sister who once made me birthday cards out of construction paper, all I saw was someone terrified, trapped in a cage I couldn't see. I drove home that day feeling a chill deep in my bones. Something ancient and primal whispering that this wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a warning. For 2 weeks, I tried to call her, to reason with her, to understand what was happening. Every time she answered, she sounded smaller, more rehearsed. The warmth in her voice had turned to something brittle and hollow. Finally, I called one of her old friends, Kelsey, hoping she could give me something. Anything. What she said chilled me. Victoria hadn't introduced her fiancé to anyone, not once. Not a friend, not a coworker, nothing. He was a ghost, existing only in her whispered mentions and her constant anxiety. That night, I sat alone in my small apartment in Raleigh and made a decision that still haunts me because it changed everything. I was going to find out who this man was, even if my sister hated me for it. So I drove to Charlotte, parked outside her apartment, waited, and when she finally appeared, looking fragile and too polished, I followed her, hating myself with every turn, but unable to stop. She met him at a cafe, and when he stepped into view, I froze. I knew his face. I'd seen it in newspaper headlines 3 years ago. Garrett Sullivan, a man whose fiancée, Christina, had died in what police had called a tragic fall. A case that had been ruled an accident even though every shred of circumstantial evidence screamed murder. I remember reading about Christina's diary, about how she'd written of feeling trapped, of being followed, of her fiancé warning her to be careful on the stairs. And now, that same man was standing there with my sister, his hand resting on the small of her back like she was already something he owned. My stomach turned. I sat there shaking, trying to breathe, trying not to vomit. When I got home, I couldn't sleep. I spent hours digging through old articles, interviews, photos, anything that could confirm what I'd seen. It was him, no doubt. Same name, same face, same predator's smile. The next day, I found Christina's sister Jennifer and reached out to her. When she called me back, her voice trembled with recognition and fury. "Your sister is in danger," she said. "He isolates them first, makes them think he's all they need. By the time they realize what he really is, it's already too late." Her words became a drumbeat in my head. Too late, too late, too late. That night, I created a fake identity, a property manager named Michelle, and contacted Garrett through a real estate forum. It was reckless, obsessive, maybe even insane, but I didn't care. If I could just get him talking, maybe I could understand what kind of man my sister was dealing with. It didn't take long for him to respond. He was charming, so polite, so confident, the kind of man who could sell trust like it was air. But beneath that charm, there was a coldness, a flicker of something dangerous. During one call, I mentioned being engaged. He laughed softly and said, "That's sweet. Just make sure you don't tell him everything. Some secrets are better buried." His tone shifted, amused, but with an edge sharp enough to draw blood. I remember hanging up and sitting in the dark, my pulse pounding in my ears. That was the moment I stopped doubting myself. My sister wasn't just marrying the wrong man, she was marrying a killer. Then, Jennifer called again. She'd found Christina's old laptop untouched since her death. Inside were unsent emails, diary drafts, records of a woman terrified for her life. He told me he'd never let me leave him. One entry read, "He told me I should be careful on the stairs." Those words burned into me. Christina had known she was going to die, and no one had saved her. I couldn't let history repeat itself. I called Victoria that night. She picked up after 3 rings. "Vicky," I said, my voice shaking. "His name is Garrett Sullivan. He killed his fiancée. Christina, please tell me you know who you're marrying." There was silence. Then, so softly I almost didn't hear it, "I know." Those 2 words ripped the world out from under me. "Then why?" I demanded. "Why are you still with him?" "Because," she whispered, "he said if I ever tried to leave, he'd kill you." I couldn't breathe. Every sound in the room blurred into static. My hands went cold. "Vicky, he knows where you live. He has photos of you. Your schedule. Everything. He said if I run, you'll have an accident. I can't let that happen. Sheila, you're all I have left." Then I heard a door open on her end, and her voice dropped to a tremor. "He's home. Please, forget about me. Stay safe." And then she hung up. I sat in the dark with the phone pressed to my ear, the silence around me heavier than air. For the first time in my life, I understood what real fear was, the kind that doesn't make you scream, but freezes you, hollow and helpless. But fear couldn't save her. I had to act. That night, I called Jennifer again, together. We reached out to a detective named Patricia, one who had handled Christina's case years earlier and never believed the accident ruling. She connected us with a lawyer and a private investigator named Thomas, who'd been tracking Garrett for years. In a small diner outside Charlotte, the 4 of us made a plan, risky, desperate, but the only one we had. We were going to catch him, this time, with proof. We decided to set a trap, one that would force Garrett to show his true self. Victoria would tell him she wanted to postpone the wedding. Just a delay. Nothing dramatic enough to make him lose control. We'd wire her apartment with hidden cameras and have officers ready nearby to intervene. Convincing Victoria to participate was the hardest thing I've ever done. When she met me in the park, she looked like a ghost, pale, trembling, her eyes darting as if he might step out from behind a tree at any moment. "He's always watching," she said. "He'll know." "Then let him," I said. "Let him think he's in control, just long enough for us to end this." When she finally agreed, I saw something flicker in her expression. Hope. Fragile, but alive. For the first time in months, she believed escape was possible. Escape. For 3 days, we planned everything to the last detail, but on the day of the operation, Garrett came home early. Thomas was still inside the apartment, finishing the camera setup. The second Garrett walked through that door, everything spiraled. We listened helplessly through the feed as Victoria tried to start the conversation, her voice shaking. "I just think maybe we're rushing things," she began. Then Garrett's voice changed, all warmth gone. "Who have you been talking to? Your sister?" There was the sound of glass shattering. A scream. Patricia shouted into her radio, "Move in," and we sped toward the building with sirens wailing. I'll never forget the sound that came next. Garrett's voice, low and calm. "Whoever's hiding in that closet better come out now before I drag them out." Then a gunshot. When we burst into the apartment, Thomas was bleeding on the floor. Garrett had Victoria pressed against the wall with a gun to her head. He looked at me like he was bored, like this was all some inconvenience. "One more step and she dies," he said, "just like Christina." He smiled, then a dead man's smile, and told us he'd planted explosives in my apartment. That if we didn't let him go, it would explode in 3 minutes. The radio crackled with confirmation a gas leak had already been reported. We had no choice. We watched him walk out with Victoria at gunpoint. His victory smile burned into my brain. 40 minutes later, they found the bomb in my apartment. Live. Real. Rigged to go off with one press of his phone. That night, I sat wrapped in a blanket outside what used to be my home, watching the lights of the bomb squad flicker against broken glass. My sister was gone, and the man who took her was somewhere out there. still holding all the power. I made a promise to myself then if it took everything I had, I would bring her back, alive. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the distance, a car door slamming, a siren echoing down the street made me jolt upright. Certain it was him. Patricia sat beside me in the precinct the next morning, her face drawn but steady. She'd been awake as long as I had. "We'll find her," she said. "He can't run forever." But I'd read enough about Garrett to know that wasn't true. He'd spent years perfecting the art of disappearing. Each time the walls closed in, he found a new identity, a new place to hide, a new woman to manipulate. He wasn't just a killer, he was a strategist. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Patricia reached to stop me, but I pressed accept anyway. "Hello, Sheila?" His voice was almost casual calm, even friendly. I felt my stomach twist. "Where's my sister?" I demanded. "She's right here," Garrett said smoothly. "A little shaken up, but safe. You want to say hi?" There was rustling, then Victoria's voice small, trembling. "Sheila? I'm okay." She wasn't okay. I could hear it in the way she forced the words out, as if a gun were pressed against her ribs. "See," Garrett said, "I'm not unreasonable, but I want you to understand something. You tried to ruin me. You set a trap. So now, I'm going to ruin you. Every day for the rest of your life. You'll wonder if today's the day I hurt your sister. You'll never know where we are. Never know if she's safe." My throat closed up. "Please, you don't have to do this." "Oh, but I do. Unless," he added, his tone shifting, "you make things right. You go public, tell the world you lied, that you invented everything about me, that you were jealous and wanted to destroy your sister's happiness. You humiliate yourself. You destroy your reputation. Then maybe, I'll let her go." Patricia was already signaling to her tech team, trying to trace the call. Garrett must have known, because he laughed. "Don't bother. I'm not where you think I am." Then the line went dead. The room fell silent except for the hum of police radios. Patricia's technician finally shook his head. "Call bounced through 6 towers. Could be anywhere between here and South Carolina." He was playing with us. I sat there, shaking, staring at the black screen of my phone. 24 hours. That's what he'd given me. 24 hours to decide whether to destroy myself or risk Victoria's life. Jennifer arrived later that night. She looked older than she had over the phone. Grief had carved deep lines into her face. She sat across from me, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee that had long gone cold. "This is exactly what he did to Christina," she said quietly. "He used people's love as a weapon. You can't let him control you like this." "But he has Victoria," I said. "What if he really kills her?" Jennifer reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, its edges worn soft from years of handling. "After Christina died, I couldn't let it go. I hired private investigators, followed every rumor. There's a cabin in the mountains near Asheville. It belonged to Garrett's grandfather. He used to take Christina there when he wanted her isolated. The investigators found signs someone had been there recently. Supplies, fresh tire tracks." Patricia leaned over, studying the photos. "That's remote country. No phone signal, no neighbors." "That's why he'd go there," Jennifer said. "It's the only place where he feels untouchable." Something in me ignited a spark of hope, or fury, or both. "Then that's where we go." Patricia hesitated. "We can't rush in blind. If he sees us coming, he'll use Victoria as a shield." "Then we don't let him see us," I said. "We plan it right this time." Within hours, a task force was assembled. Local officers, FBI support, tactical teams. Patricia coordinated it all with frightening precision. But no matter how detailed the plan, my chest ached with one constant truth: my sister was still out there, terrified, believing she'd never see me again. We left Charlotte at 3 in the morning. The mountains swallowed the highway, dark and endless. Patricia drove the lead car. I sat beside her, and Jennifer followed in the next vehicle with the tactical team. The last few miles, we killed the headlights and moved in silence, the tires crunching over gravel. Then I saw at the cabin, A small wooden structure tucked between pine trees, a single light glowing through a curtained window. Garrett's black SUV was parked out front. Patricia lifted her binoculars. "That's his vehicle," she whispered. "He's here." My heart slammed against my ribs, then so is Victoria. She radioed for backup to hold position until the tactical unit arrived. "We wait," she said firmly. But as I stared through the binoculars, I saw movement, a figure by the window. My sister. Her hands were tied, her face streaked with tears. Something inside me broke. I wasn't thinking anymore. I just opened the door and ran. Patricia's voice shouted my name, but it was too late. The cold air tore at my lungs as I sprinted toward the cabin, branches whipping against my arms. I didn't feel the pain. I only saw Victoria, the only family I had left trapped behind that glass. The front door was locked. I grabbed a rock and smashed the window. The crash echoed like thunder. Garrett spun toward me, startled, his face twisting into something monstrous. I climbed through the broken glass, cutting my arm on the frame. "Sheila," no, Victoria screamed. Garrett pulled a gun from his jacket. "You just don't know when to quit, do you?" "Let her go," I said, stepping between them. "You want someone to hurt me." He sneered. "You think you can save her? You think you're the hero in this story?" Before he could fire, the cabin door burst open. "Drop the weapon!" Patricia's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. Tactical officers poured in behind her, weapons drawn. For a second, everything froze. Garrett's eyes darted from me to Victoria, then to the door. "If I can't have her," he said softly, "no one can." He turned the gun toward Victoria. I lunged forward, slamming into him with every ounce of strength I had. The gun went off, the sound exploding in my ears. Pain ripped across my side, hot and searing. But I didn't let go. I wrestled his hand down until the gun clattered across the floor. Officers swarmed him, shouting orders. Patricia grabbed me by the shoulders and pulled me back. "You're hit," she said, pressing something against my side. Her voice sounded distant, warped by the ringing in my ears. And then Victoria was there crying, shaking, her hands clutching mine. "You came," she whispered. "Always," I managed to say, before everything went black. When I woke up, sunlight streamed through a hospital window. My side ached, wrapped in thick bandages. But I was alive. Victoria was asleep beside my bed, her hand holding mine even in her dreams, for the first time in months. She looked peaceful. Garrett Sullivan was in custody, facing kidnapping, attempted murder, and the reopening of Christina's case. It was over, or so I thought. But survival isn't the end. It's only the beginning of what comes after the healing. The guilt, the fragile, painful process of learning to live again. The first thing I remember after waking up in the hospital wasn't the pain, it was the smell. Antiseptic and linen. That sterile sweetness that clings to the air like a ghost. I turned my head and saw Victoria asleep in the chair beside me. Her fingers laced through mine, her hair messy and her face streaked with dried tears. She looked so small. For the first time in months. She wasn't pretending to be strong. The doctor came in later, smiling the kind of weary smile that comes from years of bad news, but today, thankfully, wasn't one of those days. "You're very lucky," he said. "The bullet grazed your side, 2 inches to the left, and we'd be having a very different conversation." I nodded, but my throat was tight. Lucky. The word didn't feel right. I didn't feel lucky, not after everything we'd lost. Not after everything Garrett had taken from us. When Victoria woke, the first thing she did was start apologizing for keeping secrets, for not trusting me, for getting me hurt. I stopped her. "You were trying to protect me," I said. "I was trying to save you." We both did what we thought was right. She broke down then, sobbing so hard her body shook. I held her, ignoring the pain in my side, and for the first time in years, we cried together, not out of guilt or fear, but release. For 3 days, she barely left my bedside. Jennifer visited every afternoon, her voice steady but her eyes red from sleepless nights. She brought updates from the investigation. They found more. She told us quietly. The recordings from Victoria's apartment. The old diary entries from Christina's laptop. It's all evidence now. Between that, the kidnapping, and the assault, the prosecutors say it's airtight. Good, I said. He doesn't get to hurt anyone else. Jennifer nodded. He won't. They're reopening Christina's case. This time, they'll make it stick. When she left, Victoria whispered, "Do you think Christina knows that we caught him?" I smiled weakly. I hope so. Maybe she can rest now. The weeks that followed blurred together physical therapy, police interviews, court briefings. I learned how to move again without wincing, how to breathe without flinching at the memory of that gunshot. Victoria moved in with me for a while, too afraid to be alone. We filled the silence with small routines: morning coffee, late-night movies, long walks that always ended in tears. Healing wasn't linear. Some days, she'd wake up smiling. Other days, she'd sit on the kitchen floor and cry without saying a word. I didn't know how to fix her. I didn't even know how to fix myself, but we learned to hold space for each other's pain. Therapy helped. We found a trauma counselor who didn't flinch when we told her the story, who listened without judgment, who taught us that surviving someone like Garrett wasn't weakness, it was strength. She told us something that stuck with me. You can't erase what he did, but you can decide what story comes next. That sentence changed everything. 6 months later, the trial began. The courthouse was smaller than I expected, but packed reporters, families, strangers who'd followed the case since Christina's death. When Garrett was led in, I barely recognized him. The charm that had once made him magnetic was gone. His hair was thinner, his skin pale from months in custody. He looked ordinary, almost pathetic. Victoria squeezed my hand. "He doesn't scare me anymore," she whispered. I didn't realize how much I'd needed to hear that until the tears came. The prosecution laid out everything: the recordings, the diary entries, the bomb, the kidnapping. They called Jennifer to the stand first. She spoke about her sister with trembling hands, about the years of silence and suspicion, about the day she got my message and realized history was repeating itself. Then Patricia testified, her calm authority cutting through the courtroom like steel. She described the confrontation in the cabin, the rescue, the months she'd spent chasing Garrett through dead ends and lies. Then came Victoria's turn. She was terrified. I could see it: the way her fingers twisted the hem of her blouse, the way her eyes flicked toward him as she took the stand. But when she spoke, her voice didn't shake. "He made me believe love meant fear." She said, "He convinced me that protecting the people I loved meant doing whatever he wanted. But that wasn't love. That was control. And I'm done letting him define what love is." Her testimony lasted 3 hours. She told them everything: the manipulation, the threats, the way he'd made her doubt her own sanity. The jury listened in silence. When she stepped down, she looked at me and mouthed, "We did it." Garrett's defense was laughable: claims of conspiracy, fake evidence, emotional instability. None of it mattered. The recordings alone were enough to bury him. The jury took less than 4 hours to deliver the verdict: guilty on all counts. When the judge read it aloud, I felt something leave my body, a weight I'd been carrying for years. Victoria sobbed into my shoulder. Garrett didn't react. He just stared at us with those same empty eyes, as if even now, he couldn't believe we'd won. At sentencing 3 weeks later, the judge didn't hold back. "You are a danger to society," she said. "You preyed on trust, on love, and on the goodness of others. You will spend the rest of your life in prison, and that is mercy compared to what you deserve. Life without parole." That night, Victoria and I stood outside the courthouse, the sky painted orange by the setting sun. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then she said quietly, "What now?" I looked at her and smiled. "Now we start over." The months after the trial were strange, too quiet at first. then gradually filling with life again. Victoria found a new job at a hotel in Raleigh and moved into a small house with a garden. I went back to work part-time, easing into design projects again. Every morning, we met for coffee, like a ritual to remind ourselves we were still here. One day, she said, Jennifer and I have been talking about starting something, a support network. For women like me, people trapped, scared, not knowing how to ask for help. I felt something warm bloom in my chest. You should do it, I said. You could save lives. She smiled shyly. I want you to help. You were the one who figured out how to fight back. You could teach them how to protect themselves. That's how the Christina Project was born, named for the woman who didn't get her second chance. We started small, a website, a hotline, a few volunteers. Patricia helped us train officers on how to handle cases of coercive control. Jennifer managed outreach. Thomas, the investigator who'd survived that day in the apartment, offered free services to anyone trying to gather evidence safely. Within a year, we'd helped more than 20 people leave abusive relationships. Some of them had stories like Victoria's. Others were different men, same-sex couples, even parents trapped by adult children's manipulation. Each story carried its own brand of heartbreak. But every rescue reminded us why we'd survived. Healing became our rebellion. 2 years later, Patricia sent us a letter. She'd been promoted to lieutenant and had used her new position to create a task force dedicated to re-examining suspicious accidental deaths of women. Because of you two, she wrote. We're seeing patterns we missed before. We've reopened 3 cold cases already. Justice is finally catching up. Victoria read it aloud at our Sunday coffee. We both cried not from sadness, but from gratitude. Garrett Sullivan remains in a maximum security prison, his name now synonymous with manipulation and murder. Behind those walls, there's no charm left to weaponize, only silence, only the echo of everything he destroyed. Victoria eventually remarried a gentleman who treats her with the patience she deserves. She still startles at sudden noises, still checks the locks twice before bed, but she laughs again. She gardens, she lives. As for me, I still have scars, pale lines across my side that ache when it rains, but when I touch them, I don't think of fear anymore. I think of love, the kind that saves, the kind that fights back. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't hate or punishment. It's taking the pain someone gave you and turning it into something that helps others survive. And that's what I tell every survivor we meet at the Christina Project. You're not broken. You're proof that love, the real kind, endures. If this story touched you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Share it for the sisters, the friends, and the strangers still trapped in silence. Let them know there's a way out and that their story doesn't have to end in fear.